what Donald and others around him don't seem to understand, they can be as sycophantic as they want. They cannot protect him or us from himself.
One of my absolutely favorite people, I love reading her newsletter, Mary Trump, American psychologist, PhD in clinical psychology, the author of 3 books, including the international bestseller, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. She writes a great newsletter over on Substack. It's called The Good in Us. You can go to Substack.com and find it, or just go to marytrump.org. It's also Mary L. Trump over on Blue Sky. Mary, welcome back to the program. It's so nice having you with us.
Hey, Tom, it's always wonderful to hang out with you, even during these apocalyptic times, or maybe especially during these apocalyptic times.
Yeah, it's when we all need to support each other, I think. Yeah. I'm curious your thoughts on your uncle's unhinged, obscene, blasphemous tweet yesterday.
Yeah, there's nothing like threatening war crimes on the highest holy day of the religion he was allegedly celebrating.
Right. And dropping the F-bomb.
Dropping the F-bomb and being Islamophobic, all of it. You know, it was a trifecta of awfulness. I think what worries me about it more than anything else, because we have no right anymore to be surprised or shocked by his indecency, his depravity, his cruelty, his profanity. It's the fact that there's a team of people who either felt that they couldn't control him, they couldn't convince him not to post this, as you said, blasphemous and obscene tweet, or didn't think they should.
Yeah.
So I think we need to understand that we're where we are because so many people continue to enable him past the point of sanity. So everything that's happening right now is happening with an army of people either turning a blind eye or actively supporting everything he does. And that's why he is continuing to have such a negative and profound impact, not just on this country, but on the world.
I used to work for an international relief organization based out of Germany, and in 1980, I went into Uganda at the tail end of the civil war. The Tanzanians had come in and they had ejected Idi Amin, who fled with 10,000 of his soldiers north up to Saudi Arabia, where he lived as a king with his 30-some-odd wives for the rest of his life. And we took over a region in the Karamojong region where literally people were dying every day of starvation. We were burying bodies with bulldozers. And I met several government officials, and I asked this one guy, you know, how could you have put up with Idi Amin? And his response was, we were all terrified of him. I mean, it was just a reign of terror. Do you think that the people in the Trump White House are starting to feel like that?
I think a lot of them have felt like that all along. I think many, if not all, elected Republicans have felt that way all along. But it's a difference of degree, right? People living under the horrors of Idi Amin were at risk for torture, murder, their families being murdered. And it seems now that what the Republicans who continue to enable Donald are afraid of is a mean post on his failing social media site or a threatened primary. So, or, you know, some kind of sicking the DOJ on them. That is not an excuse. That is not an excuse. And I'm sure we've talked about this before. If everybody had stood together against him at the very beginning, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Yep. And that goes not just for individuals, but it goes for corporations, institutions of higher learning, white shoe law firms, et cetera. So these people have nobody to blame but themselves. And to continue to double and quadruple down on their sycophancy and their loyalty suggests to me that they either don't understand the stakes or they don't care, which is why at some point they need to be held accountable in a very real way.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious your thoughts as a licensed clinical psychologist, an actual expert in this field, on the sundowner syndrome that Iran is now talking about, that many people in America have been talking about, that as the day progresses, Donald Trump seems to get worse and worse, losing impulse control. And then this suggestion that was made by another psychologist, Dr. John Gartner, the co-founder of Duty to Warn, that what we're seeing is actually hardcore dementia. I mean, actual dementia that involves the deterioration of the parts of his brain, the frontal lobes that control impulse, impulse control and things like that. What's your sense of, where he's at right now and where he'll be over the course of the next 3 years?
Well, the rapidity with which his condition across his physical health, his neurological health, and his psychological health is quite alarming. As far as the cognitive issues, I'm not a neuropsychologist, although I have some familiarity with neuropsychological testing, and I also understand that it is being asked to take simple cognitive assessments several times is not a good thing. But my grandfather had Alzheimer's starting in his mid to late 70s. Guess who's in his late 70s and almost 80. So I see a lot of similarities. Donald very often seems not to be oriented to time and place. He has short-term memory issues. He is suffering from hypersomnia in the middle of the day, which, as you mentioned, is an indicator of serious.
Yeah, he's nodding off, in other words. Yeah.
Yes, he's nodding off. And of course, his increasing lack of impulse control and inability to understand what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. I'm also equally concerned about his psychological deterioration. As you know, just for very obvious and definitional reasons, I've never diagnosed him, but he is increasingly meeting many of the criteria for the assessments of the Harris psychopathy checklist. And I just, like any other untreated disorder or illness, you don't get better. Yeah. Your psychiatric disorders don't just magically go away. And what we see with, again, his poor physical health, his clear cognitive decline, and his psychological deterioration is somebody who is under enormous amounts of stress, who lives a very unhealthy lifestyle, who doesn't get enough sleep, who eats poorly, et cetera, et cetera. And this is just going to lead us to a point where he is either incapacitated, which, and I'm not saying this in a flippant way at all, would be the better of the two outcomes, or he continues down this extremely dangerous path when he is putting our country and the world at risk to protect his ego. Right. I mean, that's kind of where we are right now. Yeah. And I think all of it together is a perfect storm of potential horror. Yeah.
We're talking with Mary Smith, Mary Trump. Mary publishes a brilliant newsletter, marytrump.org, The Good in Us, over on Substack. Mary, I was just looking at Earl Stevens' Substack newsletter, and he says, all this talk about psychology is all very well and good, but let's just call Trump what he is. He says, quote, he's a racist, a woman abuser, a convicted felon, a serial liar, a thief, a huckster, a user, a cheater, a phony, a complete moron, and a deviant, all of which have congealed to make him a monster and the most dangerous thing on earth. What do you think?
Well, yeah, all of that is true, but that's always been true. Mm-hmm. I don't think you can say that his racism is getting worse or his misogyny is getting worse. He's always been these things. Unfortunately, for reasons that continue not to be that clear to me, other than I guess Donald sold a lot of papers, these things about him have been normalized. Remember how many times we were told, oh, it's baked in. The American people don't care. Well, unfortunately, that happens to be true. Tens of millions of Americans don't care, either because they have different agendas or they espouse his horrific beliefs. Here's the thing, though. If all along, in addition to having panels of legal experts talking us through all of the crimes he's committed and the legal battles he's been in. We'd had panels of psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, experts in fascism, just explaining to the American people that it's not his beliefs that are the problem, although they are. It's that he is unfit in terms of his psychology and in terms of his cognitive limitations.
Right.
But no, that's never been explained in a consistent way. That people, I think it's one thing for people, they think, oh, he's racist and misogynistic, but, he's going to cut our taxes or what have you, which he hasn't done anyway. But if they had been told he is erratic, he is dangerous because he doesn't have impulse control, he is a nihilist, he is always going to get worse, he is always going to put you last and himself first for these very specific psychological reasons, which are built in and aren't going to get better, then maybe we would have had a different conversation.
That's important stuff. And you have correctly, forgive my interrupting, but I see that we have 45 seconds before we hit a hard break. I can't stop. You have correctly pointed out the New York Times is so complicit in this. I'm curious your thoughts on Pam Bondi. Do you think, how much do you think her gender played a role in that? And Kristi Noem, for that matter.
I think it does play a role, and we will see the next person fired will likely be a woman. But I think the most important thing to recognize about Bondi's firing in particular is that she could not have been more sycophantic. The reason that she couldn't do what he wanted was because she came up against a system that is still in some degree functioning. What Donald and others around him don't seem to understand, they can be as sycophantic as they want. They cannot protect him or us from himself. Yeah, and that's the big danger, frankly, for the whole country, for the world. I mean, we're looking at the potential for World War III. The great Mary Trump, American psychologist, author of multiple books, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. Check out our newsletter. It's free. It's brilliant. You want to sign up for it. Is that at marytrump.org? It points to the newsletter? Yeah, great. That's marytrump.org. Mary, thanks so much for dropping by. Thank you, Tom.
Always great talking with you. So you stood in line at the DMV, you paid your fee, you smiled for that terrible photo, and then the DMV turned around and sold you. Your name, your address, your accident history, your court records, all exposed to hundreds of companies, and your state is pocketing millions for doing it. Think about that. You're the customer and the product. But it gets worse. Data brokers take your DMV info and layer on your credit score, your shopping habits, your social media, and now there's a digital file on you ready for sale. Insurers use it to raise your rates. Scammers use it to steal your identity, all because you renewed your license. Incogni fights back for you. They contact hundreds of data brokers and legally demand your information be deleted. And if you find your info floating around online, send them the link. Their team handles the takedown. Right now, get 60% off with an exclusive deal at incogni.com/Tom. That's incogni.com/THOM, incogni.com, and take back your privacy. That's incogni.com/THOM.